Recording started.
Welcome everybody to day 2 of the Goddard Space Flight Center Education iConference. Here to present today for Teachers in Space is Liz Kennick. Go ahead, Liz.
Thank you, Jordan. Yeah, I'm really happy for this opportunity to share the work that we've been doing with Teachers in Space. We were originally funded in December of 2010 with a NASA educational grant, and we used that for the first 2 years to produce summer workshops in the summers of 2011 and 2012. And then we had some money left over and some more work we wanted to do. We applied for and received a 1-year no-cost extension, so we kept going with that grant money through the summer of 2013. And then at the end of last year, we spun off and became an independent corporation. We're incorporated as a nonprofit in the state of New York, and we're continuing to produce our professional development workshops and space experiences for teachers, and we're working on developing a new set of sponsors and supporters to keep us going. So it's very, very exciting times for us. This picture on the first slide is of our original 7 Pathfinders, the teachers who were first chosen in a contest the year before we got that grant. In 2009, we ran a national contest and had over 1,000 applicants and selected these 7 highly qualified and motivated teachers who want to go to space, who care about space, who care about STEM education, and are doing things within their classrooms and communities to really further STEM education. In the years since they were selected, 2 have gone on to other things. 5 of the original 7 are still with us, and this picture was taken at Mojave Air and Spaceport, and that's Stu Witt standing there with them. So let's go on and see if I can advance the slides, and I'll tell you more. Jordan, I don't know how to advance the slide. Oh, I remember. There we go. Okay, so what are the objectives of Teachers in Space? Most of all, we want to further STEM education by providing real space and science experiences for teachers that they can then share with their students, so that when they get that classic question, why do I need to know this? They have more than what they learned in school. The teachers have their own personal experience with STEM, with space, with science. We want to give them the ability to share in space research, use new technology, and take that back to their communities. And we anticipate that this will improve the retention of students into the STEM disciplines. Some numbers that we've seen suggest that as few as 12% of high school seniors are both interested and qualified to pursue STEM studies, and then that number further dwindles once they get into college. They may be discouraged and may choose a different major. It's very difficult to get a great number of qualified, interested students to stay with STEM studies, and we want to change that. Okay, next. Yes. All right, so what do we do? How do we do this? We have a number of workshops that we offer during the summer to give teachers hands-on space and science activities and things that they can take back to the classroom. We give them the opportunity to learn to design and participate in experiments and involve their students in that when they return to the class. One of the workshops that we produce in conjunction with Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University is about surviving space, what's required to keep people alive and healthy and able to work in the space environment. And we also have one on flight experiments. And then we are working on digitizing our content and our offerings. We provide data analysis from our flight experiments, making videos, things that will enable us to reach a much greater community than just the teachers who are able to come to our workshops each summer. So these are the workshops that we have delivered since receiving that initial NASA grant. In the summer of 2011 and 2012, each of those summers we did a total of 5 space medicine and human factors workshops, and the last one was in the summer of 2013. So it was 2, 2, and 1. And those were produced together with Embry-Riddle and often held there, but we also held one at the FAA's Kennick, the Civil Aeronautical Medical Institute in Oklahoma City, one summer. The flight experiments one has been the most popular so far because that's the one that's easiest to take back. Surviving Space is the new name for the Space Medicine and Human Factors workshop, and that relies a lot on the equipment that's available at Embry-Riddle and at CAMI. We do things in the hyperbaric or the normobaric chamber. We've used a centrifuge at NASTAR. We give the teachers some actual space training experience as well as radiation math and working with pieces of spacesuits. The radiation math stuff translates very easily to the classroom, and now we're working on ways to get some of the spacesuit work into the classroom as well. Flight Experiments works with data sensors. We've taught teachers how to do high altitude balloon launches, and several teachers have now been able to do that with their classes and in their communities, and that's really exciting. So we only do one of those workshops each summer because there's so much involved in actually producing the balloon launches and building the data sensors. We often include glider flights. So we just did one of those every summer. There have been 4 altogether, and the last one was just held in the middle of July in Columbus, Georgia this year. Previously, we've done them at NASA Ames. We've done them in Palmdale at the Aero Institute. And we hope to continue to do things in the future, both on the West and the East Coast. And then finally, the Suborbital Astronautics, we did in the beginning. We did that the first 2 years and have discontinued it because there are places such as NASTAR and soon Waypoint Space where teachers can get these same experiences. When we started, we offered suborbital astronautics mostly in a classroom setting. Now teachers can go to NASTAR, go in the centrifuge, go in the normobaric chamber, and NASTAR have begun to offer these experiences for free to teachers in the summer, which is really exciting, and we find that's a thing that our teachers love to do, especially after they've been to some of our workshops and understood why these things are important. So we give teachers through our workshops real experiences with space and technology. We connect them to the people who are actually working in these fields, and then we give them curricula that they can take back to the classroom. And we have found that there is an impact on the teachers. We hired a company called Designed Instruction. Greg Rawls runs that company. He's the evaluator, and he worked with us and with the students, with the teachers who participated in our workshops, and provided an independent external evaluation. What did they expect before they came? How did they feel after they came? And what did they find several months after returning to the classroom? So what he found over the 3 years that he evaluated the impact that the workshops had on the teachers and on their teaching, the teachers responded, up to 90% of them said that the workshops helped them increase student awareness of STEM and new space careers. So that's really exciting. That's definitely what we're hoping to do. 84% of the teachers attending our workshops said that these experiences and concepts will assist them in making the concepts real to the students, making the careers real to the students, and showing that there are new STEM, space, and science careers available and worth pursuing. 80% said that the Flight Experiments program in particular caused students to see these careers as truly attainable. And I'll talk more about what it is. We have right now the best program to take back to the classroom following our Flight Experiments program. And so we can see the value of that, and we're working on our Surviving Space workshop to have a similar way that the teachers can really take that back into the classroom. Also, the chart here is percentages of the teachers who preferred different aspects of the course, what they found to be the most valuable. So the highest bar, the one that's nearly 60%, said that the experiences of all the things in our workshop are the most valuable. That second highest bar, close to 30%, said the lectures were the most valuable. And then the next piece is the, I believe it's the evening activities. No, formal workshop interactions, things that we have happening among the teachers. We try to only have teachers come to our workshops. And then the tiny little one is the off-hours stuff that there may be available when they come spend a week. So clearly what we wanted was the experiences would be the most valuable, plus some good lecture content, and it looks like we are achieving that. So that makes us really happy. Okay, so actually before I get into this one to talk about the details of what's in a workshop, just to show you some more of what the teachers themselves have to say about the impact of these experiences Why bother? Why put teachers in a normal barrack chamber? Why take them on a glider flight? So we invited last year Time Warner Cable to come to our flight experiments workshop, and they interviewed the teachers and did some film and made an episode of their Connect a Million Minds program, and I'd like to show that to you. Jordan, can you show that little video for us, please?
Sure, thanks, Liz. If you want to mute your microphone, I'm going to do a web push. So what's going to happen is a browser is going to open on your desktop at home, and a video will begin to play. So go ahead and just sit back and relax and enjoy the video.
Okay, so that was a really fun video that captures some of the excitement. We do that glider flight experience on the second day of the Flight Experiments Tour, and the workshop just grabs the teachers right from the beginning. Monday, we're doing hands-on Arduino programming, building those sensors. Tuesday, we get up in the glider and we fly those sensors, and we learn about tracking, we learn about taking different measurements during a flight and sending that data back to the ground. And then by Thursday, we're doing a balloon launch and flying those sensors in our high-altitude balloons. So that's a really, really positive workshop. Now, I'm getting a little waiting for web tool window myself, and so I'm not seeing my slides right now.
Just a quick note, Liz, for those of you whose video is still playing, we're only wanting to show the first minute 45, so you can go ahead and stop your video now. We're going to head back to the presentation.
Great. Okay, thanks. So yeah, impact on the teachers. We talked about this, and now I'm going to take you to the next slide and talk about what's in that Flight Experiments workshop. So we want teachers to understand the types of research that are being done in space. What's the International Space Station for? What's going on up there? Why would Bob Bigelow be looking at building some additional space stations? Who needs space stations? What can we use them for? And in fact, students and teachers and classrooms can send experiments and can participate and help with a great backlog of experiments and work that are waiting to be done. We teach the teachers how to fly high-altitude balloons, how to track those, what kinds of sensors and experiments can be flown on them, how to analyze the data from that. The glider experience is great for them. We're talking to zero-G. We have done some zero-G flights, and now we're starting to have some things that may be of interest to some of our partners, that because our teachers are trained in science, they understand procedures, they're literate, they're adult, they are very good candidates for performing certain activities, certain experiments in zero-G, and eventually on suborbital flights as well. So we're excited to begin to move into those fields. And I've got orbital listed up there too, because when I went to visit Dennis Stone of Commercial Crew and Cargo at NASA Johnson in Houston, he said to me, you should be sending teachers to ISS, and I said, yes, we should. That's amazing. I hope that we can get there. Right now we're on gliders, and we're going to see how we can work our way up. Experiment selection and design. This is an important part of the Flight Experiments workshop. When the teachers get back to their classroom, they have the opportunity to work with their students and select and design 1 or 2 experiments per teacher to submit back to us. And we work with judges from academia and from NASA, from FAA, from Boeing, from Lockheed, both industry and government, and we choose the best experiment, and we fly that with the SSEP, the Student Space Flight Experiment Program. We've flown 2 of those experiments this year. The first went up in January, came back in March. The second went up in July and is at ISS right now. Both of those have flown with Orbital Sciences. That's just the launch provider that was available. SpaceX participates as well, and we look forward to doing more of these types of experiments, and I'll give you some details on this. So we're working with teachers to make sure that they understand the roles and the processes of payload specification, integration and operation, data capture, return and analysis, and not only how we develop our partners and our sponsors and our donors and the press to get the funding to do these experiments, but also how our teachers can do the same within their schools and communities. Okay. So, balloon launch experiments, we do these every year as part of our Flight Experiments Workshop, and our balloons typically go to 110,000, sometimes a little more. This summer we got one to 115,000 feet altitude. As they rise, of course, the gas, we use hydrogen, helium is also an option. The gas inside expands and eventually the balloon bursts, and then the payload comes back down to Earth. So an exciting part of the experience is tracking those balloons. We have communication software and mapping software to do that, chasing them and retrieving payloads, getting back the pictures that have been taken, the data that's been recorded, and seeing what we can learn from that. So some of the types of data sensors and other sensors, data gatherers that can be flown in these balloons, you can put up a GoPro video camera, you can send up still cameras, you can use GPS for tracking the actual location of the balloon, and that's also very useful for finding it and getting it back. Accelerometers, lots and lots of different types of sensors here that we also fly in the gliders, so the teachers get very comfortable with these. And we're very interested as well in dosimetry. We've been working with Scott Wiley, who's a meteorologist at Armstrong Flight Research Center. He just got some funding this year for flying dosimeters on many, many different types of vehicles as part of a radiation study, and we want to work with him on that. We're looking at ways that we can fly new, inexpensive, lightweight dosimeters on balloons and perhaps on some suborbital craft as well, maybe some rockets. This is a new thing for us and it's exciting. For the teachers that learn how to do balloon launches when they come and work with us, they can go get more guidance from some of the links that are listed here. Embry Riddle posts definitions and guidance on how to do balloon programs. Bobby Russell of Quest for Stars has worked with us the past 2 summers and launched his balloons concurrently with ours, provided some great live web streaming from the balloon and from the launch site this summer. And Luther Richardson of Columbus, Georgia, who hosted our workshop this summer at his high school, also has a great deal of experience, many, many balloon launches under his belt, and is really advancing the state of doing student experiments, classroom experiments, together with high-altitude balloon launches. So they all post what they've learned and guidance for others who want to follow in their footsteps. I have, in fact, one more video that I'd like to show right now, which is another little TV spot that was taken from the night before our balloon launch this summer in Columbus, Georgia, where the teachers were testing. The payloads were packed, and they were testing the cabling and rigging systems in the gymnasium of the middle school at the site where we launched. Can we see that real quick, please, Jordan?
Sure, Liz. One other note, I'm going to go ahead and post this link in the chat window as well in case the web push does not execute on your browser. So go ahead and just use that link once it shows up and enjoy the video. Another quick note, for this video you'll need to push the play button. Okay, wanted to give you a couple extra seconds there, but I'm going to send it back to Liz to continue the presentation.
Okay, great. So that's balloon launches, and that was Scott Wiley talking about how much he likes working with teachers in space, which was very, very nice, because we also like working with him. This is some photographs from our 2013 balloon launch. So not the one we just had, but the one from last summer out in Mojave. And these teachers are down on their bellies on the school parking lot getting the payloads rigged up. You can see some cabling running in the back there and attaching them to the balloons getting ready to fly. So every teacher had a job. Every teacher was involved in preparing these launches. Here they are in groups. We launched 2 balloons last year. This year we did 3. And there are also some graduate students that came out with a professor from Clark Atlanta University in Georgia. So we were beginning to establish our Georgian connection last summer, and we've got a lot further with that this year, which is great. It's nice to have some universities to work with. Here are the teachers holding the balloons. They've been filled with hydrogen. You can see a hydrogen tank lying in the lower left corner there, that red tank. And now the balloons launched, and we tracked them, and several hours later we were able to do such a great job of tracking. We had so many good communications devices working that we actually saw the payloads come down. We were following in our cars. We saw them come down. We went and got them. So that was a big improvement from the first year when we were outside NASA Ames, which is not desert like this. It's forest and hills. And it took 9 hours and flat tires and trucks and a lot of people to go get that balloon. So the Mojave is a great place. And it turns out that Columbus, Georgia is also a really good, flat, open place with a lot of farmland. So again, this summer, good luck in retrieving our balloons. This is data from that 2012 launch. We just, I use this one because there's a lot of good data posted here. I like this one. And it shows an example. Maximum altitude that the balloon reached, how long it flew, how fast did it ascend, how fast did it descend. So these are all things that were gathered from the sensors, and what's a great thing to do, what Luther Richardson does with these, and we want our teachers to do, is to produce graphs of this data and take the graphs and give them to the students in the classroom. Let them look at the charts. Let them see if they can determine what the story is. So often we teach students to take the data and make the chart, but the whole point of the chart is to communicate the story. So by giving them the story first, letting them be the scientist, then all the data begins to make much more sense and be valuable. I have an example of that. Okay, so this is an example chart. And there's some different colors here and some different things happening over time. That reddish color in the middle is a relative humidity sensor. And what happened, this is from another Mojave launch. This is from last year, from 2013. The rising desert sun begins to dry out the air. And so you can see that the relative humidity is decreasing over time until it suddenly spikes. Why does it spike? Because that's the ascent of the balloon, and the balloon goes way up high into the sky and then begins to have condensation as it returns back down through the troposphere, and then eventually evaporation, so humidity comes down again as the payload returns to ground. Meanwhile, underneath that is a bluish color, and that's the hydrogen. That's the H2 sensor, which has a little spike early on. And that little spike early on is at the time the balloon is filled. So if the nozzle is disconnected, there's a little escape of hydrogen, and that spikes the hydrogen sensor. You can see that right there. And then it's much more steady, and a little more spike probably at the time of the burst. That there's a very low level and then a slight uptick about halfway through that kind of coincides with the spike in the humidity. And if we looked at some other data such as velocity or acceleration, these things all over time, altitude, you can pretty quickly see the spike of where it is that the balloon reaches its highest altitude, bursts, and then begins rapidly to descend. That story becomes very clear when you put your different data charts together. Okay, next one, space station experiments. So we've got balloons, and then we've got experiments that go all the way up to the International Space Station, and that happens thanks to the National Center for Earth and Space Science Education, NCESSE.org. They have a program called SSEP, the Student Spaceflight Experiment Program. And when we joined up with them at the end of our 2012 Flight Experiments Workshop, they were working on Mission 3, their third mission to ISS. We bought a seat on that, and we ran an experiment contest for our teachers to work with their students. After our workshop, they get back to school, and they have the fall semester to work with the students, design experiments, submit them to us. We selected one, and it eventually flew. NanoRacks handles the decisions for SSEP as to which launch will be the launch provider. And for that particular mission, Mission 3, we thought originally that we would be flying with SpaceX, but the launch wound up coming after they had made some significant changes to their rocket. They had some delays. We had the option to fly on Soyuz. Soyuz didn't provide refrigeration. Our experiment needed that. Those that didn't went ahead and flew on Soyuz. We continued to wait and wound up flying on Orbital's first commercial resupply mission to ISS. That finally went in January of this year. We got a lot of lessons about all the things that can cause a launch to delay, and it really was a huge part of the education process for us, for the teachers, and for the students to watch and watch, get excited, plan to attend the launch, find out, no, there's been a change in the provider, there's been a delay because of some other reason. If one vehicle is already at ISS, another one has to wait until it leaves before they can launch. We ran into issues with the weather in the winter time. First, there was a blizzard. Then it was too darn cold. We went down anyway on that day of 0-degree temperatures, and the next day it was warmer. It was 20 degrees. But that day there was a solar flare, and the radiation was outside the limits that Orbital were comfortable with. And so we waited one more day, and that particular week, it was then Thursday, when Antares launched and took our experiment up to ISS. This summer, we flew with Mission 5. That was our second experiment, and that one also had some delays. We learned about thunderstorms, and that Orbital don't want to roll out and build outside of their vehicle assembly building, get ready for launch until they can be certain of good weather. So we had a little excitement with the daily thunderstorms, and that rocket launched as well, and our experiment is at ISS right now. So let's talk about what happens when the experiments get to ISS. This is the first experiment, the one that was flown by Amy McCormick's class. Amy attended our workshop in 2012, went back to her school in Melbourne, Florida, and with her 10th, 11th, and 12th graders selected an experiment. We were so thrilled. I personally wish that we could make rocketry and space science as exciting as football for schools and communities. And so to see the class and their teachers outside this sign at their school announcing not a football game, but ISS or bust, made me really, really happy. They made a postcard and a greeting card of this and sent us a copy. Next. Okay, so what was their experiment? It is about ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, which has to do with whether or not proteins are broken down properly, in this case glutamate, whether or not glutamate is getting broken down properly. If it doesn't get broken down by the body, it builds to toxic levels, and that causes neurons to die and the loss of control of voluntary muscles. Working with the ALS Foundation, Amy and her students found that they could develop an experiment that would be useful, where they could compare, they could model enzymatic breakdown using papain, which is an enzyme extracted from papaya, and using that to break down gelatin protein. And they could measure the amount of protein remaining after the reaction. They could do this on the ground, and they could do it at ISS and see if there's a difference. Their hypothesis was that the enzymatic breakdown would function better in microgravity, and so they tested to see if that was true. This was Mission 3 of the Student Spaceflight Experiment Program, and it did fly aboard Antares, so that's great. That flies out of Wallops Island, Virginia. Teachers in Space is headquartered in New York, so Virginia is a much easier drive for us than Florida. If we hear there's a launch, it's easier for us to get down there and see it. And it turns out that we also have a friend working at Orbital Sciences. We had an intern a couple of years ago who is now a launch engineer. So the day after the launch, she was able to take me inside, and I got to see inside the vehicle assembly building. She took this picture of where they are already building the next Antares. That was a really, really wonderful experience that I would like our teachers to have in the future, to be able to go inside a vehicle assembly building and see exactly how the parts are laid out, how they're shadowed on their trays, so that if one piece is missing, the shadow pattern shows you what's missing. We could get to this level with our balloon experiments, and it would be a very, very good lesson for our teachers and their students to learn about the engineering procedures that are used in controlling vehicle assembly and payload integration and launches. Okay, so the Flight Experiments program is continuing, and we will be beginning to pack our payloads not just in the types of homemade boxes that you may have seen in some of my earlier slides, but in CubeSats, so that we begin to work with CubeSats. And this is going to be important as we are able to participate in the USWIX, the Upper Atmosphere Space and Earth Weather Experiment that our partner Scott Wiley is conducting at Armstrong Flight Research Center. And we also want to be able to begin to fly our sensors and our CubeSats and our dosimeters on suborbital and orbital flights. I have starfighters listed here. They're F-14s, and one of my slide reviewers said to me, "Is that suborbital?" Well, it's not orbital. It's definitely below orbital. And no, it's an airplane. But there is some interest among the starfighters in Florida to begin to prototype eventual point-to-point suborbital flight paths. So, yeah, it's an airplane, but it's an entry point. It's something that we can do today. Suborbital, we also may have some opportunities to fly our CubeSat in test missions. That's what's currently available of both X-Core and Virgin vehicles, and we have priced out what that would cost with X-Core. We're still working on ways to get that funded, but it's of great interest to us to fly things both with X-Core and Virgin. We have an offer from Maston to put something in a nose cone in a test flight of a Zero vehicle. And we hope to be able to do some things, perhaps with SpaceX, perhaps during some of their human rating test flights. If they're flying rockets empty, can we put something in there? Who knows? These are things that we're pursuing and exploring, and that provide a lot of potential opportunity for us. And of course, additional ISS launches. We're very interested in documenting and testing and improving payload procedures for all of these types of experiments and vehicles: specification, integration, operation, track and return of data and of payloads when appropriate, whether it's for balloons or for suborbital or for rockets. Okay, so commercial crew program. I mentioned earlier commercial cargo and crew. Commercial cargo program of NASA is now considered a success because we have two suppliers. We have SpaceX and Orbital, who have each completed at least 2 missions now, resupplying ISS with cargo. So that's great. Those exist, and they're different from each other. SpaceX can return things from ISS, Antares does not. So the Cygnus burns up on return, and so that's different. Commercial crew still is underway, and we don't currently have plans to fly teachers to ISS, but we're very interested in the companies that are doing this. We're very interested in SpaceX's progress in getting rated, in being able to provide commercial crew, and in what other companies might be able to do that, watching vehicles such as Dream Chaser from Sierra Nevada. And we're interested in working with SpaceX and are talking with them about ways that we can help them in their mission of inspiring more people to go into the fields that they need, particularly propulsion engineering, aerospace engineering, electrical engineering, computer engineering, and ways that they can help us to do better workshops and better experiments, and we can collaborate and help each other succeed. Okay, next slide here is on the Surviving Space workshop. This is the other workshop. We didn't do this one this summer, partly because of funding. As we've just become independent, our funding is a little low right now, and we chose to do the flight experiments because that has the most momentum. Surviving Space Workshop, we took a year off and expanded the team working on that and began to work with some of the partners that we brought in last year, Embry-Riddle in particular, and also Ted Southern of Final Frontier Design. You can see him in the picture. That's me in the spacesuit. That's his spacesuit, one of several designs that his company in Brooklyn have developed. Ted is a sculptor and a costumer and a designer. He has made the angel wings for the Victoria's Secret runway models. He's worked in fashion. And he has a great interest in space and technology and gloves. He entered a NASA glove competition where he met his partner, Nikolai Moiseev, who is Russian. Nikolai took second place in that glove competition, and the two men began working together and created Final Frontier Designs, which is now at the Brooklyn Navy Yards. They have some contracts. They're building spacesuits. And Ted brought pieces of his spacesuit to our Surviving Space Workshop at Embry-Riddle last year. Teachers found that fascinating. Ted and Nick have developed, you can see the helmet on this spacesuit. Ted has told me that they have now developed the only American-made helmet and neck junction. They do not rely on Russian parts for that. And they're now building the hood that will be worn by astronauts inside the helmet that needs to hold the biomonitors, the sensors for ensuring that the astronaut is safe and healthy. Some of these are similar to the ones that we work with in our flight experiments program, and some of them are ones that we're interested in. Radiation matters, carbon dioxide matters, blood oxygen level matters, pulse matters, blood pressure matters. We are talking with Ted and with Embry-Riddle about whether there's a way that we can develop a very small, carefully controlled experiment contest for teachers to take back to the classroom that would relate to that, relate to work with those sensors or designing how those sensors work inside the spacesuit. Something along those lines is of great interest to us. And then we may be able to participate in some of the testing of the aspects of the suit, which is also really exciting. Other things that matter besides the suit and protection for a person in space, of course, is just what happens to your body when you're spending great periods of time in different gravities. How does weightlessness affect you? What are the life support systems that are required? What about radiation? And so these are the things that are part of this workshop. The image to the left is a slide from Dr. Sten Odenwald's session. He provides about half a day of content for the teachers on working with radiation math and dosimetry. It's very exciting to me because I love the experiences. I love the flights. I love the spacesuits. I love the experiments. When Sten sits the teachers down in the classroom and says, okay, now let's do the math, they get their calculators out. They're just as excited about that. These are STEM teachers, and they love to do these calculations. And it's really exciting to see them enjoy that and to see them be able to relate this work to what they're learning from the experiences. I know that this makes it much more real and able for them to take it back to their students. Okay, these are some of the many partners and collaborators that we've developed in the years of putting these workshops together. In order to do the workshops, we have to ask people how they do what they do, ask them to help us. Often they give us knowledge, sometimes they give us equipment, sometimes they give us money, sometimes they give us locations where we can hold our workshops or conduct some of our activities. Sometimes they provide their very knowledgeable employees to be judges of our contests. So we've worked with Student Spaceflight Experiment Program, the NASA Space Portal at NASA Ames, Waypoint Space, a new space training provider currently in Houston. The Mojave Air and Spaceport has been a great supporter and let us hold a class out there and help us with our glider flights. Johns Hopkins University has provided a judge of our contests. Office of the Chief Technologist at NASA, great guidance and inspiration and suggestions for ways we can improve. Some balloon programs. Folks from Boeing have been judges of our contest. SpaceX has allowed us to take our teachers inside their Hawthorne facility and see them at work. Gwen Shotwell came and sat with our teachers for about half an hour and told them about SpaceX and her time there and what they're doing, where they're going, and answered their questions. NASTAR has provided us training and provided training for our teachers. Maston has offered us some flight opportunities. And XCOR ought to be on here. If they're not, XCOR belong on there because they have also offered us some flight opportunities. And Rick Steerfoss, yeah, there they are, right above the SpaceX. Rick Steerfoss, former Space Shuttle commander, is now head of test flights at XCOR, and he's one of our glider pilots who take our teachers up in the flight experiments class, teach them about gliding and about flight and about lift. And of course, meteorologist Scott Wiley is our other pilot. Okay, Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. This is at the New Space Conference that the Space Frontier Foundation hosts each July. This is from last year, from 2013, when Lance Erickson, who is a professor of applied aviation and the creator of Embry-Riddle's new undergraduate program, he was announcing this at the conference last year. They are the first university in the U.S. to offer an undergraduate degree program in commercial space operations, and he mentioned that as part of that they will be providing support for the Teachers in Space program, which at the time was part of the Space Frontier Foundation. And they do continue to work with us. They're working with us now on overhauling that Surviving Space workshop, bringing it up to date, making it as good as we can make it, and getting it running again for next summer. So we're really excited about that. SpaceX, we're talking with them as well. And we're excited to hear that they're going to be building a new facility in Brownsville, Texas. Texas is a place that we may be able to do some flight experiments workshops with them. I mentioned the types of engineering that they're looking for. This is taken right off their careers website. It's a really exciting time for me personally because I've been involved with Space Frontier Foundation and with what's often called New Space since 2006. And for many of those early years, for me, when we were talking about commercial space companies, new space companies, it was PowerPoints of what they were going to do. In the past couple of years, we and they have been able to say, here's what we have done. And so it's exciting to see these companies flying and actually having careers and hiring up on their websites. They are hiring. They are seeking software engineers, hardware engineers, structural engineers, propulsion engineers, and people who can handle launch and test. Real careers for our high school students today. They need to go to college, but that's the point. We want them to know right now. Catch them right now. If you're in 10th grade, 11th grade, and you're looking at college, these careers are ready for you. And we're seeing students from Embry-Riddle, for example, getting internships at SpaceX and then going on to careers, which is really, really wonderful. We started in 2010. We had a nearly $400,000. It was so close that I call it a $400,000 grant, and we wound up stretching that over 3 years. We spent $200,000 of it in the first year developing the workshops, and then in the second year we were able to spend only $130,000 and produce just as many workshops, and that included an overhaul of the flight experiments workshop. That's when we added the balloon launch. We did a Zeppelin flight with the teachers. We flew those same data sensors on the Zeppelin out of NASA Ames. That turned out to be the last flight of that Zeppelin, so we're really glad we got to have that opportunity. And that's when we added our flight with the SSEP, the Student Spaceflight Experiment Program. In 2013, we had just a tiny little bit of extra money that we were able to raise on our own, and we went ahead and did 2 more workshops. One more of the Surviving Space with Embry-Riddle and 1 more flight experiments out at the Aero Institute. Both of those organizations were wonderful about enabling us to do this on such a very small budget. That's really the budget for 1 workshop, but we got a lot of support from these 2 wonderful sponsors. And so as a result, and because of our work with the Student Spaceflight Experiment Program, we began to get to do some great public outreach. We were invited, our teacher Amy McCormick and her experiment team, her students, came with us to the Air and Space Museum at Smithsonian and spoke about their experiment, which had not yet flown. They spoke about the design of the experiment, and they presented a poster session on that along with the other student communities. And then We also were invited to speak at Intrepid Space Fest, which was happening concurrently. That's in New York, so we sent some of our teacher volunteers to do that, and they did a great job. And then you saw the episode that Time Warner did, that ran, and then Time Warner also premiered that at Intrepid about a month later and invited us to come out and answer questions on that, so that was really good. And let's see, we secured, using the funding from this grant, both of our SSEP launches. So it was a wonderful grant. It developed the workshops and it got us flying. Now what? Okay, so we're in funding discussions with a number of sponsors, and this is not a pitch. The reason this is here is just to say, what does it cost? Well, this is what we have found that it costs, and this is where we're going to try to keep going. So it looks like the grant that we received was really, really accurate. You know, that's the right amount of money to do 4 new workshops and lots of balloon launches and additional experiment launches to ISS. Those increase a little bit each year. They're up to about $23,000 per launch now, just for the SSEP cost, and then of course the schools raise their own money, typically about $20,000 of additional money for their experiments and lab time and help that they need in order to do a good job in designing and conducting and analyzing their experiments. So this is what we're working on as we go forward and as we try to grow our organization in one that can provide video modules, curriculum modules, and even Skype sessions with STEM coaches, so that we do more than just the workshops, which reach about 30 teachers per workshop. We want to be able to do this digitally and make it available to as many people as often as we possibly can. We have been getting some good donations and support. Embry Riddle is talking about $100,000 over 5 years, $20,000 a year toward that surviving space workshop, which is great. That's a big help. The value of the Lynx flight that's been promised by X-Corps for a teacher, that's a $90,000 value when Lynx is able to fly one of our teachers on a suborbital flight. Waypoint to Space have promised us a full round of spaceflight training for one of our teachers. In fact, they asked for a teacher in Texas, and we have nominated one. She's been to visit them, and we're waiting for them to come online so that she can begin to do that. She's really excited about that. NASTAR put all of our Pathfinders and team, 8 of us, through their centrifuge training. That's a $40,000 value. So it's opportunities, it's money. There are many, many ways that our sponsors are beginning to support us, and I really hope to be able to tell you some more exciting things in the coming months. Okay, we've had a lot of press and publicity just this year. These are the most recent things. I showed you that little TV spot from Columbus, Georgia about the upcoming balloon launch the night before we did the balloon launch. And Terry's carrying our experiment, among others, to ISS is up on Universe today. The 2 July student experiments at the National Air and Space, 2nd of July student experiments presented at the National Air and Space Museum. Lots and lots of information on ssep.org about every experiment, every community that they've flown. Huge amount of information there. And you don't have to come through Teachers in Space to participate with the Student Spaceflight Experiment Program. A coalition of 13 New York City public schools joined that, and they have an experiment that I think launched together with ours on the 2nd of July. So you can do it through us if you're a teacher. You can go directly to SSEP and participate in the contests that they run as well. If you Google for Teachers in Space, you'll find lots and lots of information about us. And this is a Google link that Amy McCormick sent me for the media coverage. She's done a great job of getting local media coverage for that experiment on ALS that she and her students did that flew on SSEP Mission 3. And in fact, she developed such a good relationship with one of her local journalists that that journalist, Mackenzie Ryan, wound up pitching the experiment to a local PBS channel. They have made a 3-part PBS series that will air in Florida on a local Florida PBS channel probably in October. So that's really exciting. And of course the Connect a Million Minds episode that I just showed you. So you can do this. You can start your journey. Come to us. Oh, this is an old, darn it, I thought I updated all my slides. This is the Space Frontier one. At the bottom of my slides in white, you can see our new website, because we just spun off in May. It's teachers-in-space.com. How to get information on microcontrol programming, Arduino programming, so that you can work with these remote data sensors. How to learn about CubeSats, so that you can fly things in balloons or eventually on suborbital vehicles with links and version. Have payload specification and integration guides available telling you how to fly a CubeSat either in or outside of the vehicle. And of course, CubeSats can be loaded into the NanoRex equipment in ISS. I understand they can now be attached outside ISS, and they can also be launched from ISS. So many things can be done with CubeSats. There's suborbital research. We love this group, SWRI. I think it's Southwest Research Institute, but they put on the NSRC that I put the logo for here. The next one coming up is in January, the Next Generation Suborbital Researchers Conference, where people present actual research that they are doing. And it's so inspiring to meet the scientists, learn about what they're doing, and find out ways that we can participate. So many areas to be explored in medicine, in life support, in monitoring, in equipment development, in development of the payload specifications and procedures. Lots and lots of work to be done suborbitally as well as orbitally. ISS experiments. NCES is the National Center for Earth and Space Science Education. They run that SOEP Student Spaceflight Experiment Program. Okay, I see there's a lot of questions coming up, and I am going to give you those. This is our Teachers in Space Facebook page. You don't have to come to our workshops to join this. It's a public page, and we have not had 1,000 people. We've had 300 teachers now go through our workshops, but over 1,000 coming on our page to see what's going on, and we invite you to do the same and to follow us and interact with us and learn more. So let's get on those questions. And this is my first experience doing the Blackboard thing. I'm excited about it. I'm much more accustomed to standing on a stage, but let's see if I can do this. I see a question here on, I'm scrolling. It says how to do the chat, and then there's some that are too small for me to read. And then I think there's one about, Sten Odenwald. Wasn't he the fantastic space math author? I would bet that he is. Yes, you spelled his name correctly. That's right. Sten, S-T-E-N, Odenwald, O-D-E-N-W-A-L-D. And probably in this pile of papers right behind me, I have some of his radiation math stuff. These are some of the Teachers in Space folders from, it used to be called Space Medicine and Human Factors. This is the one that we're rebranding as Surviving Space. And sure enough, radiation math, ta-da, how can I put this right where you can see it? There it is indeed by Sten Odenwald, and it's excerpts from that book, and he updates these annually on his website and when he comes to teach about radiation and radiation math in our class. Yeah, thank you, Amy McCormick. Amy McCormick is online.
Liz, we have one question from Matthias Rieger, who is asking about CubeSat. If you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see his question, and I think that's all we have.
Okay, cool. Matt, you want to know about CubeSat? I'm scrolling. How many people apply, and how many are accepted in the end on CubeSat? Okay, believe it or not, if you apply and you are qualified, where we're doing the CubeSats is in our flight experiment class. We have been able to accept everybody who applies and is qualified. We take 25 participants, and it's not heavily publicized. We don't pay for advertising, so the way you find out about it is when we get the folks at NASA to post it through their NASA EONS, E-O-N-S. That's one way the information gets out. It goes up on our website. It goes up on Facebook. We put it out through social media. We get it on blogs. And we specify that we really want you to be a U.S. citizen, because if we take you inside SpaceX, or we take you to NASA sites, or we take you to them, sometimes we just went to Fort Benning, there are places where you need to be a U.S. citizen. So that's preferred. We prefer that you be teaching high school, because Our immediate highest aim is to reach the high school students while we can still catch them and make sure that they pursue STEM education in college and that they get into these new space companies and build this industry. We need those students working in those fields. We need them working as interns in college. We need them right away. So we're looking for STEM teachers. We really want science, technology, engineering, and math teachers. And we want them in high school, and we want them U.S. citizens. We will take English and art teachers. We will take middle school teachers. We had a really qualified and motivated teacher from Puerto Rico. We've had some interest from Australia and Canada. We're open to these things. If you really want to do this, watch for our applications to come online on teachers-in-space.com. We usually open them up in January and apply. It's easy. What else?
That's about all we have time for, and I do see that Danita shared a nice comment about the job that you all did with your grant. But at this point, I'm going to have to, because we're just past 2, going to have to log off. But I want to share a little information first. So thank you so much for presenting.
Thank you.
One of the things I want to share is first of all, thanks to Liz Kennick and the entire Teachers in Space team for their presentation today and all the outstanding work that they've done. I want to also tell you a little bit about tomorrow's presentation. Tomorrow we're going to hear from the folks from Real World In-World Design Challenge, NASA Engineering Design Challenge. They're going to talk about their project, so we have another outstanding program tomorrow. And if you'd like to see an archive of this presentation, you can visit the iConference website that was given to you in that most recent email, and you can check out an archive there in a couple weeks when it's up and running. So thank you so much for joining us. We will be back with day 3 of NASA Goddard's Education iConference tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So thanks again to Teachers in Space, and we will see you tomorrow.